For many people in the United States, the age of Trumpism has not simply been a political era, it has been an emotional ordeal. The shock has not worn off. Instead, it has settled into the nervous system, reshaping how people think, feel, speak, and imagine the future. What once felt unthinkable, the erosion of democratic norms, the mainstreaming of far-right nationalism, the weakening of institutional guardrails meant to protect people from abuses of power, now confronts us as a daily reality. People who believed deeply in pluralism, constitutional democracy, and the slow, imperfect arc of moral progress find themselves grappling with something more than disagreement or disappointment. They are living through grief. The collapse of shared democratic values has produced not confusion alone, but sorrow, anxiety, and a profound sense of dislocation. The struggle is not only political, it is emotional. Professor Kevin J. Doughty at Columbia University published a paper this week entitled "The Politics of Emotions in the Age of Trumpism." In it, he describes how one of the most pervasive emotions of this moment is loss. This is not merely frustration with elections or policy outcomes. It is the loss of a moral baseline. Many people grew up believing that while American democracy was deeply flawed, it rested on shared commitments, respect for elections, limits on executive power, accountability for leaders, and a basic concern for human dignity. Those commitments now feel precarious. People mourn the loss of shared reality, the sense that facts matter, that cruelty should shock, and that violence and corruption are disqualifying rather than excusable. They mourn the disappearance of restraint from public life and the normalization of behavior once regarded as beyond the pale. This grief is intensified by the realization that fellow citizens may not experience this moment as a crisis at all. This sadness is not about a lost hierarchy or fading dominance. It's about lost norms, the quiet rules that made disagreement survivable and democracy workable. Because these norms are intangible, their disappearance is difficult to explain and even harder to reverse. The result is a low-grade sorrow that lingers beneath daily routines, shaping how people relate to their country and to one another. Alongside loss sits shame. Many people carry a heavy sense of collective failure. How did the warning signs go unheeded? How did institutions fail so thoroughly? How did this happen in a country that prided itself on constitutional checks and balances? This shame often turns inward. Teachers, journalists, lawyers, students, parents, people who were taught to trust civic institutions and democratic norms wrestle with the fear that their confidence was misplaced. They replay past moments, wondering whether something more could have been done, sooner or louder. Unlike political movements that encourage defiance and the rejection of guilt, this emotional landscape offers few mechanisms for releasing shame. There are no rituals of absolution, no easy narratives of innocence. Instead, shame accumulates, becoming exhaustion. People feel morally overburdened, as if they are constantly failing to meet the demands of an emergency that never ends. Fear has become a structuring emotion of everyday political life. It's not abstract or exaggerated fear, but specific and anticipatory. People worry about what happens when power is unconstrained, when dissent is punished, when legal protections become conditional. They fear for immigrants, journalists, LGBTQ people, and ordinary individuals caught in the reach of an increasingly punitive state. This fear is informed by history and by global examples of democratic backsliding, but even rational fear has consequences. It produces chronic stress, hypervigilance, and a sense that danger is always just around the corner. Many people report feeling unable to rest without guilt or disengage without dread. Fear also changes behavior. People avoid political conversations, withdraw from public life, or silence themselves online and offline. Over time, this erodes the confidence that democratic participation requires. Coping becomes less about civic engagement and more about emotional survival. Perhaps the most destabilizing emotional shift has been the collapse of trust, not only in leaders, but in institutions once seen as stabilizing forces. Courts, legislatures, media organizations, and professional norms appear fragile or compromised. The belief that someone will stop this has steadily eroded. This produces a painful sense of betrayal. The rules were supposed to matter. Expertise was supposed to count. Guardrails were supposed to hold. When they fail, people are left without clear sources of authority or reassurance. Distrust of this kind is corrosive. It makes it difficult to know where to place hope without drifting into denial. Many people swing between grim realism and desperate optimism, searching for evidence that democratic repair is still possible. Anger is present everywhere, but it often sits uneasily. People are angry at corruption, cruelty, and the abuse of power. They are angry at lies, at indifference, at the rewriting of reality. Yet anger is frequently treated as dangerous or morally suspect, something to be restrained rather than harnessed. As a result, anger often turns inward. It becomes burnout, bitterness, or despair instead of sustained action. Without shared frameworks for directing anger towards systems rather than individuals, it can feel isolating and self-defeating. History suggests that meaningful change has always required anger, channeled carefully, ethically, and collectively. The challenge is not whether anger belongs in democratic life, but how to hold it without becoming consumed by it. In this environment, hope cannot be naive. It cannot be a feeling that things will simply work out. For many people today, hope is closer to a discipline than an emotion. It is the decision to continue caring, even when evidence is thin. It is the refusal to surrender moral language to cynicism or authoritarianism. This kind of hope survives in small, shared acts, showing up, teaching, organizing, voting, helping neighbors, telling the truth even when it feels futile. It lives in communities that insist on dignity and in movements that remember earlier struggles against forces that once seemed immovable. Crucially, this hope does not deny fear or grief. It exists alongside them. It says that people are allowed to be afraid and still act, allowed to grieve and still resist. The murder of Renee Nicole Good by a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent in Minneapolis stands as a chilling indicator of how far executive power and federal force has strayed from democratic restraint under the Trump regime. Renee was driving away when the agent fired into her vehicle, a scenario that contradicts the claims from federal officers that she posed a clear threat. Outrage followed, not only because a civilian lost her life without a crime at the hands of a federal agent, but also because of the regime's response, which was to defend the use of lethal force and deploy thousands of additional agents to the Twin Cities rather than immediately mandate independent investigation or accountability. Many see Renee's death, one of several violent federal actions in recent months, as a new low in the use of government power, raising alarm about unchecked authority, eroding civil liberties, and the dangerous precedent set when deadly force becomes normalized in domestic political enforcement rather than an exception justified only in the most extreme circumstances. The emotional cost of this era is real. Feeling devastated by democratic collapse is not fragility. It is evidence of moral attachment. Feeling exhausted is not failure. It is the human response to prolonged stress. Feeling grief means something valuable has been threatened. Politics has always been emotional. The danger is not that emotions are present now, but they are so often dismissed or borne alone. Naming loss, fear, anger, and hope is not indulgent. It is a necessary step toward endurance. If democracy is to be rebuilt, it will not be by people who feel nothing. It will be by people who feel deeply, refuse to normalize what should never be normal, and continue, despite everything, to care. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5-Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.